Hey everyone, this is a score attack tier list ranking video of all the units in Pitter Patter Pop. This was recorded on the 11th of October, towards the end of the Highway Star event. So if you're watching this in the future, it may be outdated, or I could already have made an updated video on this, though I recommend setting through this if you're interested anyways, because this is the first video that I'm doing regarding these rankings. There are 81 units in the game as of the recording, so that's quite a lot of content to go through. Now, I'd like to preface this video by saying that, as with any tier list, it aims to be as objective as possible, but the subjectivity of your own opinions may not align with mine, so if you disagree with anything, that's honestly fine. You don't have to follow this list blindly, and if you find something that works better for you, just go for it. Next, the rankings are generally based on the highest potential the units can go, typically at max levels and skill levels. There's also the factor of whether recent score attack seasons have favored certain units because of any mechanic changes specifically made for score attack, such as stand-up time duration or stand-up charge. Lastly, this list does not have any left to right ranking within the tiers. The time I need to justify all of that would take way too long, and I just don't have the time for that. All I did was just order them by part orders, so parts 1 of 5. And the last reminder is that this is for score attack. General levels such as furniture event cards can be typically cleared by any unit really, so there's not much to say about it. Of course, there are some units that will clear them faster and more efficiently, like Diavolo or Stroheim, but that's a whole nother topic. We'll start off at the bottom with F tier. So in this tier we have Speedwagon, Keicho, Tamami, Fragio, Bruno, Ghiaccio, and Secco. Speedweed's down here because this square erase pattern synergizes with next to no one, and having a high cooldown for an eraser that does so little doesn't justify any reason to use him if you're being serious. Keicho on first glance looks pretty solid actually. 15 panels erased, and he has that good eraser cooldown of 50. Then you realize that his damage multiplier is the absolute fucking worst in the game. Now I don't have any footage on me right now, but try going to a game with Keicho and some other BR eraser and then compare the damage they output using their skills back to back. You'll notice Keicho typically does even less damage than the BR, despite erasing more panels. That, coupled with the fact that the checkerboard pattern doesn't work with anyone, just makes Keicho a pretty bad eraser in comparison to others. Tamami just erases partner panels, and only partner panels. That's it. 10 at 60 cooldown looks okay, but you have to start to realize that unless you're running a main replacer as his partner, which is a terrible partner option to start off with, you're not going to reach that limit of 10 under normal circumstances on common occasions. Our frog meme lord Fragio is unfortunately capped at skill level 1. 8 panels replaced for 80 cooldown is pretty much what a normal skill level 1 GR main replacer has going for them, and he can't improve from that. He also has a BR power stat, so there's unfortunately nothing going for a frog boy besides just having a frog. Bruno replaces random panels with his own, and then drags them to the bottom. Now this would sound nice because dragon replacers typically help with creating larger squares, the other comparison being Pesci, but when you look at that cooldown for the number of panels you're getting, yikes. Being the first unit released on a diamond banner didn't really help Bruno at all, besides just not being able to stand the test of time. Ghiaccio's numbers look pretty good on paper. Of the 12 panels replaced at 60 cooldown, notice I say up to. What dictates how many panels he can create? Well, he creates panels under his own pre-existing panels, so it's pretty convoluted and annoying to try to set up his panels before using a skill, just to try to get a large square and stand up. Also, if you have 2 Ghiaccio panels on top of one another, and then you pop his skill, he can actually overlap and replace the one on the bottom, meaning that one of your 12 panels have just been wasted. Secco enhances blocks, if there are any, and moves them down. If there aren't enough blocks, he'll enhance his own panels instead and move them down. If there are neither, he does nothing. What a great skill. The fact that he's reliant on the existence of obstacles makes him pretty useless without the correct partner to be able to clear those enhanced blocks, of which there aren't many to begin with. And these partners that he works well with have better partners of their own, so there really isn't a reason to use Sekko in the first place. Now in E tier we have Avdol, 3-0, Nukasaku, Act 2, Mish, and Trista. Avdol replaces with his panels in a cross pattern, and prioritizes replacing over any blocks. The max number of panels he replaces is 15, and that's with the assumption that he won't overlap his own cross replaces with each other. This lack of consistency is really what hurts him. It's the same with 3-0, who replaces in a 2x2 pattern instead, 4 times at max skill level. The issue of overlapping also puts him in this tier as compared to other main replacers who have a fixed replace range. Nukasaku erases his own panels on the board, then prevents them from spawning for about 15 seconds. This is a pretty decent support skill, since removing his panel spawns allow for faster matching as there are only 5 types of panels on the board, and it also does well with main replacers. The main issue is the erase itself is pretty underwhelming, and he has BR power stats, and there are 3 other units who fulfill this niche and do it much better. Act 2 replaces random panels with partner boxes. That's it. I mean, sure, it's pretty useful for main replacers, but why would I have to sacrifice a skill slot for this when I could just, make the boxes on my own? Mish erases random panels, and the number erased is increased according to the number of obstacles on the board. I'll link the PPP encyclopedia in the description so you can check how the math works for determining how many panels are erased, because it also factors according to your skill level. The issue with Mish is the fact that she's dependent on obstacles. It's highly dependent on the level, so there aren't really many partners who supplement this, and you really don't want to waste your skill slots just to mess up the board in order to pull off a race with Mish. It really is not worth it. Finally, we have Trista, who erases random panels and prioritizes enhanced panels, dealing massive damage to them. First issue is that having to have enhanced panels be the only thing that benefits from the damage bonus severely limits her partner options. Second issue is that enhanced blocks don't count, so that again limits her partner options. And third, you're honestly better off using regular Mista because the units who spawn blocks actually synergize way better. In D tier we have Brando, Bruford, Oat Joseph, Whole Horse, Pet Shop, Boingo, Josuke, Kira, Akira, Babakio, Voice Bruno, Formaggio, Illuso, and Trish. Brando just random replaces with his own panels. It's nothing special, and it is pretty much outclassed by any other 16-panel main replacer. It's the same with Trish, except Trish has a higher number of panels replaced, but a lower base amount. She'll replace extra panels depending on the number of obstacles on the board, using the same mechanic Mish does. Of course, she has the same issues as Mish, but the replacer is typically better than the eraser because regular Trish has more partners to work with that fare better. Bruford erases in this X pattern. It's nothing really noteworthy considering there aren't any units which benefit off this range at all. Having good eraser cooldown does save him from being any lower on the list. It's the same with Whole Horse, except he erases on the left side instead. Old Joseph replaces his partner's panels with his own enhanced panels. Enhancers are pretty good in general, but the issue with this unit is that it either forces you to use your main replacer, and that main replacer's role is just to serve as ammunition for Old Joseph's skill, or it forces you to hoard partner panels or boxes so that a skill is actually useful. And for score attack, having to do any of this is typically not a good idea. Pet Shop replaces with his panels in the corner. Yeah, that range is kind of blech, but you can manipulate it to an extent. Josuke is also a main replacer who replaces in this pattern. Not exactly the best pattern to work with because you have a very high chance of just getting random stray matches and being unable to set up large squares consistently. Only Risotto can bypass this problem, but really Risotto bypasses a lot of issues that replacers who have crappy ranges have. Oingo's skill is to spawn books which erase in a cross pattern. You have to tap to activate the erase, and if you wait too long, it'll turn into a block. In a score attack, you don't really want to waste time having to tap all the books just to get their erase off because every second counts. Having a 20 erase at max is pretty decent, but if you spend too much time positioning the books, they might just turn into blocks. Kira's skill is similar, but it's boxes instead of books, and it automatically explodes during the skill animation. You can also have stray boxes set up before activating the skill and having them blow up, along with whatever Kira spawns. The issue is that the skill can be inconsistent, and there are many better picks for erasers out there who are much more consistent, and this also applies to Boingo. There's also a BR in C tier that erases in the same manner, but with one difference that makes him better, is that the erase itself is not based on an object like a box or a book. Akira enhances his own panels, so it's basically just a shittier version of Shigechi. Having a support replacer will work fine with his skill, but it can only go so far. Abakio clones the bottom half of the board to the top. Some replacers like Voice Giorno benefit off this clone as their ranges coincide in the bottom half, or you could set up boxes and clone then use them for making larger squares. While this is neat and all, you're gonna drop a lot of time setting up, so the ceiling for Abakio teams ends up falling pretty short. Voice Bruno has pretty much the same issues I have with Act 2. If I wanted to make boxes, I can just do them on my own without wasting a skill slot. The 5-second wait on the zippers also kinda sucked because that means you had to wait before matching during stand-up. Also, you typically force yourself to place partner panels in his zipper range, otherwise you'll get random boxes. Outside of GER, he doesn't have anyone that really benefits off the zippers and his erase range. Formaggio replaces partner panels with his own panels, and has the boost level mechanic attached to it. This means that you have to use a skill in order to raise his in-game boost level, which enhances the effect of his skill subsequently. At boost level 1, he replaces 4 panels, and at boost level 5, which is the maximum, he replaces 12 panels. He synergizes super well with Risotto because he replaces over Risotto panels, but the boost level mechanic slows down the start of rounds, and besides using Risotto, no one else benefits off the skill. Illuso is just a vertical version of Abakio. He clones the left side of the board to the right side, and is only able to clone the partner panels on the left to the right. It's the same exact idea as Abakio, just that instead of Voice Giorno working in the range, it's Voice Jonathan instead. Alright, there are a lot of boys in C tier, so this is gonna take a while. Bear with me. There's Voice Jonathan, William, Dyer, Tarkus, Joseph, Voice Caesar, Lisa, Stroheim, Wamu, Santana, ACDC, Cars, Beck, Straight So, Kakyoin, Polnareff, Alessi, Chaka, Enya, Iggy, Gamer Darby, Oingo, Maria, Angelo, Hazamada, Yuya, Giorno, Mista, Pesci, Malone, Chocolata, and Part 5 Polnareff.
This video was a fucking mistake.
Voice Jonathan is the first unit to erase, then replace in the same range. It's pretty useful in terms of getting gauge up for his partner because you're essentially getting 24 charge out of it. The issue is that he really lacks consistent partners who can help with his range, and at higher level play with Risotto, 12 panels is just not enough for consistent looping. Will's skill spawns wine cutters, which erase the rows which they are on when they are tapped. They can't be moved manually and drop when a panel below it has been removed. So why is he here above Boingo and Kira? Well, for starters, you're consistently always going to erase the entire row, whereas the D-tier boys are more inconsistent. Sure, you won't have the option to move the cutters around, but they spawn at the top, so it's not too hard to manipulate them. This also allows for Will to be used with Fuko, where you need to consistently hit all the enhanced blocks to reap the full benefits, whereas Boingo and Kira most likely would not do it on a consistent basis. Dire spawns partner panels in the same pattern as Pet Shop. It's a pretty decent range for a support replacer because most main replacers have their spawn range within the middle, so this typically allows for a consistent 4x4 or 5x5 team. Or you could just go apeshit and run Shigeru FM, and that's a pretty fun comp. Tarkus is your generic 12-panel eraser whose range is at the bottom, so he'll pair well with Voice Josuke and to some extent GER, as he can clear out most of the enhanced blocks. Joseph spawns up to 9 pairs of 2 Joseph panels on the board, meaning he can spawn 18 if there are 0 overlaps, which is pretty unlikely. Still, compared to Avdol and Breedero, he can consistently put out more of his panels since the spawn sizes are small and numerous. Voice Caesar spawns single bubbles, which when tapped, spawn enhanced Caesar panels. The cooldown is just too high to justify what his skill already provides, and normal Caesar or any 16-panel main replacer for that matter already gets enhanced panels if you just use Risotto. Also, since the bubbles spawn one by one, it means they might not be connected next to each other, so you'll have to waste time tapping on each one. Lisa enhances panels down the middle columns. It's a decent skill with a pretty poor cooldown, but the range works with certain erasers like Okuyasu. Stroheim's skill is to spawn some of his own panels and then detonate all Stroheim panels on the board, and his panels won't spawn for the remainder of the match, at the cost of being unable to use his skill anymore. This should really be used as a support skill rather than a main damage one and score attack, as you'll spend the bulk of the match with the other team member without Stroheim. The panel removal is great for allowing for easier matches and stand-up, and the skill being locked after one use has become useful since recent score attack seasons have made it so using your leader skill causes the boss to spawn some obstacles, so you can essentially bypass this by making Stroheim your leader. Wamu and Santana are essentially the same unit with slightly different erase ranges. Both erase 16 panels, which is good, but the ranges complement no one, so having a partner that takes them up a notch doesn't exist. Still, running them with other erasers is a pretty good budget team. AC/DC is sorta like Avdol, but an eraser and without the block priority. He can erase 4 cross shapes, which max out at 20 panels. For a BR, this is pretty good, and since the erase isn't object-based, pairing him with Fugo is a pretty decent option. Cars replaces with his own panels in the middle rows. This is a pretty alright placement since you can manipulate a 4x4 pretty easily with this pattern. Wired Beck erases 12 panels in the middle portion, and his range works well with some great partners like Act 1 Koichi and Fugo, so he's a pretty great budget eraser to work with. Straight Cell enhances panels from the bottom left to the top right, then erases all panels below these enhanced panels, effectively making it a 6 enhanced panels and 15 erased panels, which is a pretty good skill. The downside to this is that he won't enhance any panels connected during stand-up, and if there are any obstacles on the diagonal line, nothing will happen. So if you were to have some obstruction in the top right panel position, you miss out on 1 enhanced and 5 erased, and no one wants that. Kakyoin is your standard 16-panel main replacer. The checkboard pattern does allow for free manipulation of his panels, which can be useful if you're skilled at creating large squares, but it's also susceptible to stray matches which may disrupt your large square making. But he's a good risotto partner, I guess. Polnareff erases 12 panels 1 by 1 randomly. This is good for increasing combo as it adds to the counter 1 by 1, so you'll get 12 extra combo out of it. There aren't really any clear-cut great partners, so just running him with another eraser works fine. Alessi spawns his own panels on the bottom right, and he is boost level tied to his skill. At max boost level, he'll spawn a 4x4 in the bottom right. That's great, but of course you have to deal with the fact that he needs to use his skill 4 times beforehand, and not many units work with this range. For Chaka, it's the same thing as Tarkus, it's a 12 erase, but in the middle rows instead. I'd say he's worse off because there are not really many units that complement an eraser in that range. Enya is also similar to Lisa, but with her enhanced range being in the top half. I can really only think of Iggy or Fugo benefiting from that range completely, but it's still not too bad for an enhancer. Next we have Iggy, whose skill replaces in the same range as Enya, so they're a decent budget replace enhanced comp. And you can drag up tiles easily to the top to create larger squares. Other than that though, he's a pretty mediocre replacer. Gamer Darby creates yes no panels, which when tapped either spawn enhanced partner panels or his own enhanced panels. There's no timing associated to when to tap, it's just purely 50-50. He's basically an RNG Rohan who could either give your partner charge or himself charge. Oingo is another RNG Rohan, as he replaces any Oingo panels with enhanced partner panels. There's at least some consistency, but it's dependent on whether the board has his panels or not. Maria enhances random panels on the board and also has boost level on her skill. At max boost level, she enhances 14 random panels, then this is a pretty good enhancer skill, but having it be random can be an issue, and boost level startup will always suck. Angelo is another of the BR erasers. His range is at the top, so he'll work well with Fugo. Hazamata spawns partner panels in this range, and it's kinda similar to Yukaku in the sense that using it outside of stand-up will allow the panels to match into 2 boxes, which you can save up for later. The pattern range also allows for easy 4x4s, but the reason I don't put him in the tier above alongside Yukaku is because the range sucks for pairing with other main replacers, and most main replacers have their ranges in the middle, so the skills kinda conflict. Yuya erases 14 panels at the bottom and gains 3 times more charge of erasing enhanced panels. This is nice and all, but it comes at the cost of having higher cooldown and limited partner options. Outside of Voice Josuke, no one else will be able to consistently make use of this 3 times bonus. Giorno has a pretty decent replace range, taking mainly the middle columns and a few more on the top corners. It's pretty easy to manipulate a 4x4 or even a 5x5 out of it, but outside of using Risotto, he kinda lacks some of the other partner options that the B tier replacers have. Mystus goes to target blocks and deal massive damage if he does hit a block. This works pretty well to dish out a lot of damage when used with another block spawner like Chocolata or Fugo, or on boards which spawn block obstacles. The issue with the skill is that you only erase 6 panels at max, so your partner won't get much skill charge out of it at all, as well as you getting very little stand-up charge. So skill chaining is pretty difficult to pull off, which really just offsets the extra damage for the fact that you'll spend more time trying to charge your skill and stand-up gauge. Teshi spawns his partner's panels, and then rearranges them all to the top. It's got pretty good utility for making large squares, especially for newer players who aren't too good in stand-up time. My gripe with him is that he only spawns 8 panels, and he also doesn't replace his own panels, which might make the difference between a 5x5 from becoming a 6x6. And that's basically double the damage you'll be missing out on. Malona raises in a small checkerboard pattern and spawns a box on the panel which intersects with the 4th row and the 4th column. Okay, I know that sounds really specific, but just try to skull out on your own, you'll see what I mean. He's kind of an instant ramen voice, Bruno. It's tasty, but it's not really gonna get you too far, and since it's just 1 box and 12 erase, it's kinda but the box spawns instantly, so still better than Voice Bruno in that regard. Chocolata is a wide eraser, erasing 22 panels, mostly at the bottom half. It's a great underutilized range, except the drawback is spawning 8 regular blocks which last 10 seconds on the board. So yeah, that sort of kills a lot of options you could run with him. And his options that do work consistently with him tend not to be good for chaining skills at all. Outside of his debut score attack, he hasn't seen much use and has fallen off to sort of being borderline mediocre and borderline good. And lastly, thank God, Part 5 Polnareff. He erases and then replaces with his partner's panels on the third and second most bottom rows. It was pretty much made with GR in mind, as well as being the combo with some main replacers. That being said, it hasn't seen much use to warrant it being up in the higher tiers, or the fact that 12 panel ranges still aren't really that good. Now moving up to the tiers that are pretty good. In B tier we have Jonathan, Caesar, Voice Joseph, Voice Stroheim, Dio, Okuyasu, Rohan, Shigechi, Yukako, Narancia, Prosciutto, and Diavolo. Jonathan has been a pretty solid replacer ever since the launch of the game, with his range only requiring you to fit 4 Jonathan panels in 4 corners for an instant 4x4. The range also complements with Act 1 Koichi, allowing you to run them as a sort of bootleg risotto team, being able to chain their skills together to some extent. It's a pretty great beginner team because of how accessible it is to get, since Jonathan can be chosen as your starter unit. Also, running risotto himself with Jonathan works well. If you don't have these options, then support replacers also assist in making large squares in stand-up. Caesar has the lowest cooldown of all the 16 panel main replacers. Drawback of this being that he spawns his panels in random 2x2 bubble clusters, that most of the time they're all connected to each other, so you really only need one tap to pop all of them, but you'll still spend time having to tap. And you can typically cancel the animation time by using your partner's skill. His partner options are basically the same as Jonathan, and the obvious reason why he's ahead of his voice counterpart is spawning more bubbles, having a lower cooldown, and the enhanced panels you can just make with Act 1 or Risotto. Voice Joseph has the lowest cooldown in the game with 20, his skill being to spawn partner panels in this weird range and then erase the largest partner panel connection on the board. If I'm not wrong, the damage multiplier for the erase is the same as for the rows, or in layman terms, it's big damage. His best partners are Shigechi because he'll enhance his own panels, and you compare that with the erase for fat damage. Also for the rows, so you can change his skill twice in a loop, before and after time stop. Main replacers also work if you're looking for a big nuke each time. Voice Stroheim is almost the same as his counterpart, permanently removing a random cheers panels instead of his own, and having the passive ability to double the spawn rates of his partner. That last bit is why he's above regular Stroheim, because he supports in another way besides the permanent panel removal. Shigechi's great because you'll get more Shigechi panels, and that just means faster and easier charge, and main replacers also work great because you'll have more of their own panels spawning on the board, allowing for better stand-ups. Dio's moved up from mediocrity because recent seasons have made it so the boards have next to no blocks, allowing Dio to actually consistently pull off a 30+ erase in his time stop. Of course, the big issue would be the cooldown, but you can generally alleviate it through Fotoro or somewhat using wide erasers. I'm gonna skip ahead to Prosciutto because he's quite similar to Dio, because he's mainly used as a support eraser. He erases all his cheer panels on the board. The comparison between him and Dio is that Dio has the potential to pretty much wipe the entire board, while Prosciutto will average out between 20 to 30 because, getting 36 cheer panels is really unlikely unless you're using a panel remover. He offsets this lower erase ceiling by having a much more manageable cooldown. Okuyasu erases in the penis shape.
Come on guys, laugh, it's a penis, cock and balls, ha ha ha.
Alright, that's enough of that. The range works great with units such as Fugo and the new Voice Josuke, and that's why he's better than the SR erasers in C tier, because he has actual good teams to run. Of course, he's severely outclassed by the 24 panel erasers in A tier, which we'll talk about later. Rohan spawns enhanced partner panels randomly, and back in the day you'd prominently see him with Fotoro as he was the only reliable support for him, because back then, all the boards had a lot of obstacles. Outside of Fotoro, running him with a main replacer allows for enhanced large squares and stand-up time. Shigechi enhances his own panels, then reshuffles all other panels. Most of the time the panel reshuffling allows for instant matches to be made. That and enhancing and matching his own enhanced panels recharges his own skill pretty quickly. Running a support replacer or voice Stroheim helps to increase the number of Shigechi panels and allows you to spam the skill more often. Yukako spawns her panels on the borders of the board. It's about 8 panels on each end, so if you use it in non-stand-up time, you'll get 2 of her boxes up. The range may look small, but it's mainly because you're accustomed to seeing panels spawn in the middle, but compared to Jonathan and Caesar, it's pretty much identical, 16 panels. She works great with support replacers and of course risotto, and the 2-box thing is pretty useful if you're in a pinch. Naranjo is kind of a borderline option for me, who might actually move down a tier in the next lesser vision since, spray and pray isn't that impressive, it's not too consistent. But, 8 panels erased at 24 cooldown along with it having increased the combo counter by 8 allows for a pretty spammable skill with the right partner, and it works well with other erasers, and to some extent you could run it with Fugo, although you may not erase all the enhanced blocks all the time. Lastly, we have Diavolo, who have already made a video talking about his skill and the mechanics behind his stand-up and his potential ceiling. Still, getting around 10 million with Voice Giorno is still pretty good. Alright, so in A tier we have Voice Cars, Bag Polnareff, Vanilla Ice, Voice Josuke, Act 1 Koichi, Fugo, and Voice Giorno. Voice Cars has boost level attached to his skill, but at max boost level he raises 24 panels with no other drawbacks. Beside the whole boost level thing, wasting time at the start of rounds, he's not only a great support eraser for Fordero, which most of the erasers in this tier are, he works with Fugo and Act 1 Koichi as well, and is just in general a pretty great eraser. Bag Polnareff's skill is to erase more panels as your combo counter increases, capping at 24 panels erased in a checkerboard pattern once you hit 100 combo and above. The damage he outputs with a 24 panels is pretty impressive, hitting between 150 to 200,000 damage in non-stand-up time. The only issue I have with him is the checkerboard pattern kinda sucks because if you're unable to chain your skills directly into stand-up, you're gonna potentially lose combo in time waiting for the panels of the board to just drop, and losing combo will potentially screw your run over. Vanilla Ice, in my opinion, is currently the best support partner for Fordero. Besides being able to erase many panels with his skill, which is useful for charging partner and stand-up gauge, the permanent panel removal also allows for better stand-ups and more consistent 4x4s, which is why you'll see him used more than Fugo, because Fugo's blocks deny any 4x4s from being made. Of course, Vanilla Ice could end up going back to being mediocre if the devs decide to remove extended stand-up time. Voice Josuke erases, then enhances in the little mountain shape at the bottom, and at 75 cooldown, you're actually able to consistently use a skill twice in one loop, so you're basically getting 28 erases and 28 enhances in one loop, which is just fantastic. Besides Fordero, you can run Oku or Yuya or anyone who can hit those enhanced panels. You could also use GER with Voice Josuke, although you won't be able to erase the top corner enhanced blocks that GER spawns. Act 1 Koichi enhances 12 panels in the middle. With a great cooldown of 50, he's pretty much the most versatile and accessible enhancer and by far the best BR. You pair him with replacers that chain each other's skills, same thing with erasers, you chain each other's skills and do large amounts of damage. You can also pair him with Yugiboy Fordero to recharge time stop and have it ready after every single stand-up. He's just pretty fucking good for being classed as a BR. Fugo erases the top 4 rows with a benefit or drawback depending on the team you're running, that he spawns those 4 enhanced blocks. It's a benefit if your partner is able to erase those blocks for extra damage, and it's a drawback if you're running someone who doesn't erase them, because it just denies 4x4s for being made. Hence, that's why you don't see him at the tippy top of rankings anymore, because the other previously mentioned A tier erasers don't have that problem. And Voice Giorno is the main replacer with the added bonus of being able to create enhanced panels if there were any pre-existing Giorno panels or blocks in his erase replace range, He also has 5 less cooldown now, so this won't really make any difference if you're using Risotto, because Risotto pretty much enhances everything. But outside of Risotto comms, Voice Giorno gets more utility with these added benefits, being the enhanced panels and the 5 less cooldown, and other comps that aren't Risotto, and running a support replacer would be Diavolo and Abakia. Now I'm just gonna show the SS and S tiers, which you should already know about, and also in that same Diavolo video I talk about why I rank them as such. So yeah, that's the end of this excruciatingly long video. I plan to do updates to the list in video form rather, explaining, you know, the rationale for changing any tiers or units within tiers. So yeah, hope you've enjoyed and learned something about why your favorite unit fucking sucks. I'm just kidding, just play the game however you want. It's just a video game, just do whatever works for you. See ya.